Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. We're in Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia, and our guest today is Norway's Prime Minister, Erna Solberg. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're attending your first African Union summit. You've come here to talk about the so-called Sustainable Development Goals, and especially because there are a number of them, the issue of health. We know that in Africa it's a major issue. There are a number of statistics. About 50%, over 50% of the continent's population lack access to basic health services. This is a major undertaking.
Yes, and of course we have achieved a lot the last years. During the period after 2000, we have diminished the numbers of children and mothers that are dying at birth and that are dying before the age of 5 years. So there's a lot of achievement around the world. But still, and of course some of these are based on the vaccine programs of Gavi that we have been supporting. But we also have to look at the other illnesses that kill people. And of course, one of them is lack of proper sanitation. It's the spreading diseases. It's not enough investment in government are not investing enough in health. And we had a so-called replenishing meeting in Oslo for the mechanism that is called DFF, which is they get more money from the World Bank and from a fund that we have established when you do a priority yourself. And what we now see is that a lot of countries, because that they get additional fund when they do a priority themselves, they do in fact also increase their own health investments.
Right, but still, I've checked, only 2 of the 50 African Union member states meet the target of dedicating at least 15% of their national budget to health. There have been improvements, but clearly we're not there yet.
No, absolutely not. And we have to get more countries that are increasing. And I do believe in that type of financing mechanisms in development, that you are not giving money, that erodes the budget from making sure that the governments can use that money on something else, that you are in fact giving supplements either by supporting results or giving supplements when people have reached their targets themselves. And I think that's an important part of increasing funding in health. This is a great need in Africa. It's a great need in a lot of countries. Even developed countries are not meeting the target on health because we have too many people who are not getting treated for mental illnesses, for example.
And the private sector, obviously, is playing a larger role. Is it a good thing, or is it a way of saying governments are not doing their jobs?
I think the private sector is important for innovation, for new ways of both delivering services, new ways of solving technical problems. Let me give you one example. In Gavi, which gives vaccines with a plan that we have been supporting for the last 15 years from Norway's side, they had this problem of the fact that when the electricity goes out, the vaccines dies on the countryside in African countries. So, because the Gates Foundation was part of that, they put their brightest mind into thinking, can we solve this? And have come up with new ways of storage so that they can live without the need of electricity for a longer time. That type of cooperation do you in fact need, because businesses are better at this and more innovative than governments will be in how to deliver, to distribute, but it has also to be a governmental priority.
Right. I want to go back to Europe and to the big question, Brexit, deal or no deal? What's your sense right now?
Well, I hope there will be a deal, and I still will hope that until late the night before you eventually can see a no deal, because I think that's the best for Europe. I think it's the best for Britain. It's the best for the whole cooperation for the future in Europe. But I'm, of course, saddened to see that there is no result yet in British politics, and that we are not moving forward on getting a type of deal that we all can live with. I think this will damage both Britain and EU longer than if we've had a deal.
Right, but because it seems that instead of going towards a deal, we're going towards a no deal. I mean, that's That's what we're seeing.
For the time being, yes. So then it's just, of course, the key to this is the British Parliament.
Right.
To try to find a way to resolve some of the differences that they have. And then, of course, we also have to plan for a no deal too. And Norway has done that for a long time. We have decided together with the Brits that in case of a non-deal, we will have this, people who live from Britain, who live in Norway, will have the same possibilities, the same jobs and same situations as before. Right. And Norwegians who live in Britain will have the same.
Right, but still, I mean, Norway is of course not part of the EU, but it's the relationship, the trade relationship with Britain is key. I mean, if there's a no deal, this could hurt you economically, correct?
Absolutely. We can hurt just because, half of our exports to Britain will not be touched by it because it's
oil,
separate.
right.
It's oil and gas, and it's separate and transmission of energy. But the other part, of course, will be in the same situation as other countries' exports. It will depend on their ability to handle tariffs, handling in the harbors, handling at the airports. All of these things will, of course, hurt and cost more money. And then, secondly, of course, Britain has for a long time been the country that businesses would work. If you left Norway to become more globalized, Britain would be the country you would go to. Norwegian speaks fairly good English. They can, cope in that type of environment, and most companies would go there. That is not does not have the same access to the rest of Europe, for example. So there will be more companies probably looking at other places to go, and it might not be Europe at all. Because so many of those, globalization processes might lead companies to establish themselves in Asia or in US.
Is a EU membership bid for Norway a possibility at all? We know there were twice attempts that failed. There
is no popular support for that at least this time. But there's great support for the EEA agreement that makes us a fully member of the internal market. But I don't see a Norwegian membership in the European Union as a possibility for the near future.
Right. I want to get to Russia. Obviously, it's a neighbor. According to your defense minister, it is Norway's biggest concern. I'm just going to quote what the spokesperson for the Russian foreign minister said recently. Russia has accused Norway of, quote unquote, escalating tensions and increased the risk of military action. This will not be left without response.
Well, I, of course, believe that Russia is our biggest concern. Just by the mere size of the country, we have a common border. They have increased their military capacities enormously the last year. They are more mobile. They can go faster. They have better equipment, and all of this. We don't see Russia as a threat to Norway. We don't see anything in Russia's plans that involves. But if there is a crisis in the world, we know where we are placed in the world. We know that our coastline is important for Russia due to the sailing into Murmansk and the northern parts of Russia where they have their submarines. That's why we also think that we always have to plan for our security against Russia.
Right, because when it says this will not be left without a response, I mean, this is threatening military action. And other tensions, you don't really believe it.
No, we don't see that as a plan from the Russians. We do have good cooperation in the north. We do people-to-people cooperation. We cooperate on search and rescue in the northern part. We have, so I think it's more as a signal that they always will be with clear messages when it comes to NATO activity in Norway. And Norway has always lived with the fact that our strength is backed by NATO. And that our military and our independence is backed by the fact that we are a NATO country.
But clearly, for the first time since World War II, you have foreign troops in Norway, namely U.S. Marines. Initially 300, now it's 700, including some who have moved towards the north of Norway, that is close to the border with Russia.
We have had NATO soldiers in Norway on temporary training like these are doing
But
also.
that's a signal you're sending to the Russians.
No, they are on temporary training. They are circulating their participation. It's not a base, it's a Norwegian...
It could become a base.
No, it's a Norwegian-run base. They are on a Norwegian military facility. There's Norwegian-run. They are doing activity training. Like we have people who come from Britain to train in special operations in Norway and who have been on winter ski training and warfare.
But it's not business as usual. You agree with that?
Yes, but to us it's also is a part of the changing that we also see that to have the US commit to being in Norway, that is also strengthening our security.
Right, but aren't you worried more generally by the US attitude towards Russia, even towards NATO? You must be a bit worried.
I think we all find that the world is more unstable these days. Also when it comes to certain views from American President, for example, on unworthing. On the other hand, I have also heard him very clearly and loudly say that NATO is important for the US. Article 5 is important also for the US. And it's important to remember that the only time NATO have used Article 5 is in defense of the US.
So you think he will not leave NATO?
No, I don't think the US will leave NATO because it's a strong commitment from the US towards NATO. But I do believe that he will continue to be firm on the issue that we should increase our military spending, which we are doing.
Okay. Thank you very much, Erna Solberg, for coming on the France 24 set. And thank you very much for watching this interview from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia.